What is up, you guys? Last time on the Hashira Half Hour, we talked about Tanjiro waking up to the elusive Hashira in front of his eyes and going through a somewhat unofficial trial. We saw Sanemi be rude as hell to everybody in the room, but we're going to get more into that later on. Of course, it's me, your resident Mitsuri and Gyomei stan, Bryan, and I am joined by my lovelies.
What's up, everyone? I'm Hannah, and I am still reeling from all the Demon Slayer news that we got. Let's go see a movie. Let's do it.
I'm so excited. It's going to be so good. It's going to be so cool to get to see it on the big screen, too. It was really fun last time for Mugen Train, so I'm looking forward to this. But on that note, hi, guys. I'm Emily. I'm also just happy to be here today. It's another nice cloudy day here in Arizona. And we're rapidly approaching the holidays, which is like one of my favorite times of year. It just feels like cozy and warm, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with friends and family. So I'm just feeling good, just feeling like bubbly and good.
We're on a good note here in the Hashira Half Hour. We're trying to make this work so we can go see the premiere in LA at the Orpheum Theater. Us and our previous guest, Jenna, we are trying to figure out how we can all cram into my SUV and vroom vroom over there. So if you have any ideas or tips on how to get over there or get tickets faster, send us a DM, but you know what we're here for. We're here to talk about the Hashira meeting upon us. And I'm really excited to talk about this episode. The lens that I decided to choose for this episode is values of the individual characters and how they choose to demonstrate those values with their words and actions. Before we get into the actual episode, though, a little bit about me. If I am rewatching an anime, I don't usually watch the intro. Now, people might come for me for that, but like I like to save time, especially like right now with watching Naruto. I have the same opening for like 60 episodes. Listen, that's 120 minutes that I'm gonna save out of my life. But in this episode of Demon Slayer, you do see something different in the intro. We finally see the Hashira that are lit up because we've introduced them. Did you notice that on your first watch through? And also, did you notice that the intro banner had changed to purple and black clouds?
Oh, I love when these little like Easter eggs get dropped, and you're right, you have to pay attention to them and you can't click the skip button on Netflix like so many of us do. And to be honest, I don't know that I did see it the first time because I think that I was so eager to see like what was happening that I think that I did skip it, or maybe at the time I had it. I feel like it's a setting even on Netflix where it's like after you watch like the first two or something, it'll just automatically skip for you if it sees that you're watching multiple in a row, which admittedly was me, the first time that it came out. So I don't know that I did, but I was looking at Bryan's outline for this episode and I saw his little note about this. And I was like, wait, let me go back and watch that. And it is in there. And I love when they just drop those little hints in there. A few shows have done this. And do it really, really well. One that's coming out right now that's kind of doing it is the My Hero intro for this, what is it, season 6 that's coming out right now. They've been changing it up a couple of times. And
Really?
Yeah, there's a couple things in the intro of My Hero that they're changing, and the outro. Definitely the outro. A couple things are changing as well, like once inciting incidents happen in the show. And I love when things get changed up. So that's like the first example that's coming to my mind right now because I'm also watching that show right now. But it's just so fun when it's like the little Easter eggs of something that you've seen now happen in the action of the show is being hinted at, or like salt rubbed into the wound maybe for like some of the things that have happened. And just like the animators acknowledging that. I really, really like it.
Yeah, I'll admit I didn't catch it the first time either. I think it's partially because, and I'm not trying to call him out, but my husband is an opening skipper. Like I have to like beg him to let me watch it once. And I am a non-opening skipper unless it's a song that I just really can't get behind. But I definitely missed it the first time, but I did catch it probably a few watch throughs ago because I like that foreshadowing. We see Gyu from the beginning because we met him in the first episode. But what I really liked is after we meet Shinobu, we could see her. And then the first time we saw the Hashira, we didn't see Obanai or Sonomi. So everyone but them were lit up. And then once we saw them, it was lit up. And I thought that was just like a really cool way to foreshadow things. Obviously, my experience with anime is a lot shorter than both of you, but I have yet to see an anime do that. I'll have to watch the My Hero opening back and see those changes that Emily's talking about. But and I really like that. I think that most shows don't think to put foreshadowing and those small details into the opening credits. So good for the animators for catching on to that and keeping things secretive for us to know like who these people are. It kind of tells us how important they are probably going to be to the story. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think the little details like that really make the story come alive. And I think it kind of adds excitement, especially if you are someone who doesn't like to skip it, right? Like you get something visually new to kind of keep your engagement. And so if you're continually paying attention for those things, right, you're going to continually look for more of those Easter eggs. And I feel like that's what's going to engage you throughout the episode. So it's a really good kind of just piece to talk about. But once we get past the intro, right, we see Sonomi just straight up like, here's my blood, offering it to Nezuko as a temptation, and she's drooling, veins popping and sweating. She's also pissed because she's getting stabbed, and Sonomi is just straight up mocking her. Nezuko is enthralled, though, and until she sees the forest one more time, and she gets her own flashback scene. We love a good flashback, right? First off, that flashback was insanely beautiful to watch. And I believe that this is the first time since her turning into a demon that we hear her voice to proclaim humans are not to be harmed. She then furiously refuses Sonomi's blood. How did you all feel that in this moment? And what values does it demonstrate for Nezuko and Sonomi?
Oh man, watching it back made me emotional once again. I think this is one of the first times, if not the first time, we're really seeing a flashback of her family for her. You know, we've seen a lot of flashbacks of the family through Tanjiro's eyes because we're seeing the story through his eyes, but we haven't really gotten to see much about what she's gone through and what she remembers. So I thought that was really touching because it reminds us that she's going through her own personal turmoil and trauma that we maybe sometimes forget because Tanjiro is just so much more like the spotlight is on him. So I really found that to be beautiful. And then kind of speaking on the value side of things, I think it just shows that, first of all, even though we heard Urokadaki's little hypnosis during this, I think it's proving that her choice to not devour humans is not fully on that hypnosis, that this is a value that she holds to herself consciously, rather than it's just some mindless, oh, I went through a hypnosis and now I don't murder humans. I think that it showed that it's because of her strength and her values that she's not doing that. So I thought it was a really important moment as well.
Yeah. It really speaks to Nezuko's strength. I think it's almost unheard of for demons to be able to overcome those base desires, you know, as we've seen. Even the most intelligent ones that replicate the most human thought patterns. I mean, like who's the closest? It's like Tamayo, maybe. But she also has time on her side. We don't even know exactly, I don't think, how old she is yet, but we know that she's been around for a minute. Nezuko is a relatively new demon, you know, only a couple of years since transitioning, and a good chunk of that was also spent asleep. So it's like that wouldn't have been on the hunt or on the prowl. And this is the first time I think that she's being offered willing prey, and she's able to draw on those memories that were instilled, you know, in her during the hypnosis, and that inner strength and those human qualities that remain. So I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. And how impressive, you know, like, no, I don't know that they're going to be able to say anything, you know, right after this, all of the demon slayers, because they're observing it with their own eyes. So just like incredible strength and willpower from Nezuko. And like Hannah said, it's wonderful to get to see it through her eyes this time, because I feel like my one complaint I think about the show is that I wish that we like saw that more. So the moments that we do get are moments that I cherish, because she really is so strong and so powerful, and they wouldn't be able to make it through without her. So love that for Nezuko. As for Sonami, I think we're really getting to see that he is such an instigator. He is like so obnoxious. And we love him, but you know, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but it speaks to the hierarchy of siblings in his household, I think. And you know, the nature of what those relationships are, and then also his relationship to the other Hashira. Like he really is being much more aggressive in his approach to all of this than anybody else, even if maybe they agree with him on some kind of base level. You know, he's demonstrating that it's like a my way or the highway kind of thing, and he doesn't want to believe anything that he doesn't see with his own eyes, and even then he's embarrassed to be wrong. And we kind of get to see him throughout the episode like be embarrassed for his behavior. But I do think that the reason he would have stuck to his guns in this way is because he truly believed in his own intuition, and he hasn't seen anything to indicate otherwise in his adventures as a Hashira so far. So he's an instigator, but I think that he has good intentions.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall with Sonami as well, is that like he is someone that needs to see it in front of his face. And, you know, as Nezuko turned away, they were like, what just happened? And then one of the girls was like, the demon refused his blood in disgust. And he was like, so be it. And he was like, whatever. But like, he was someone that is going to like hold his ground. And I think that is, while I don't like Sonami very much as a character, I do think that is one respectable quality about him, is that he does stand by what he believes in. And I think that's very important as a Hashira. So overall, I think that's a pretty cool quality about them.
I think, oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I realized you had mentioned Sonami in your question. I'd completely forgotten to answer about that, which I am so sorry. I love Sonami. I think I might like Sonami the most of the three of us, which is wild considering the opening. He's like my fourth or fifth favorite at this point. Yeah, not at this point in the anime. I hated him the first time I watched it, but I think his values are very similar to Tanjiro's. In this moment, we see both of them being extremely stubborn in very different ways. And kind of like I touched on in the last episode, we've spent this story in Tanjiro's point of view. So we're obviously going to back him and what he's been through. We've seen it all unfold. We've seen, you know, him lose his family and his journey so far to turn Nezuko back into a human. And we're just now meeting Sonami. But you get the idea that maybe he's gone through something as well that we haven't seen. And they both have experienced something that they're extremely stubborn about and don't want to be wrong about. But we're obviously going to cheer for Tanjiro because we've spent this time with him. And I'm saying this as a Tanjiro lover. We all know that I'm the biggest Tanjiro stan in the world. But I think this just shows, even though he's not going about it in the right way, and I think he's a little bit of a person that's like, I need to be right all the time, especially in front of the master, he still has a reason. And it's very important that I think his values are very, very similar to Tanjiro's. And they both were being extremely stubborn.
Yeah, they're probably both Tauruses. Let's be real. Yeah. I think honestly, stubbornness though, I think that also comes with territory, right? Like, I think at the point when you become a Hashira, right, you get to be a little stubborn, right? Like, because you've seen it all, hopefully most of it, right? We'll get to more about what they've actually seen a little bit later in the episode, right? But at the same time this is happening, we also have the peanut gallery on the side, right? We have Master Ubuyashiki, we have Tanjiro and Hashira watching Sonami try and tempt Nezuko here. And we start to get a little bit more characterization on how these characters embody their own values in their side conversations. Which character spoke out to you the most in this side commentary?
Spoke to me the most? I mean, they all had something very interesting to say. Shoot, I don't know. I think it all was very important, but I do want to call out, even though he really wasn't speaking, because it's Giyu Tomioka, but Giyu's quiet defense of Tanjiro during this whole thing, and Shinobu trying to kind of tell Obanai to calm down, be like, hey, you're gonna like kill him. And Tanjiro's just fighting it. That's why he's pushing so hard on his back. But Gyu's just kind of around. He's not saying anything, but he is very clearly just defending Tanjiro with everything that I think he knows how to do. So it's not even that he's speaking. And I think maybe the fact that he wasn't speaking, that's why it's so powerful to me, is because that kind of goes along with his character, but also he's choosing to let things unfold, but he is still showing signs of that protection over the Kamado siblings and, you know, knowing what is to come without spoiling things. Just the beginning of a beautiful friendship between him and the Kamado siblings, I think.
I'm still very touched by Gyu's willingness to like throw down for them.
Mm-hmm.
We've known this, I think, since the first episode, but it's not something that we're reminded of again until, you know, we're almost at the end now of season 1. And it's really nice. And I think it's important for him to have something to really believe in that's tangible. So love the call out to Gyu. I think though, for me, the person that I was most drawn to in this moment is someone that I feel like is really important, and we haven't talked about them that much yet, but I think Master Uba Yoshiki himself. He barely says anything in the entire time that we've seen him so far. He, you know, just kind of quietly stands, and we can't even say that he observes because he's blind, right? He has to like have everything that's going on kind of detailed for him by somebody that can see what's going on. So I'm intrigued about how somebody in that physical state can be the head of like the elite and in top physical form Hashira. And so to me, that means that already like his intellect has to be beyond anything that we've seen so far in the show, and like his battle strategies. And I think that there's something amusing about him just kind of taking in this like slapstick nonsense that's going on in front of him. And he's like letting it play out, but he's just like the patient dad of the group. And, you know, he has like a larger plan for them, but he's like, kids will be kids. Let's let them duke it out a little bit. And he seems to have like a good sense of humor about it, I think, given the like the depth and the impact that his decision has, you know, on the future. It is kind of funny and goofy for us to watch, but the truth is it would be unheard of what he's allowing and like the sanctions that he's made for this duo. So it's like funny that he's approaching it with like a light heart, but I also think that his intentions are probably much more serious.
Yeah, those are really interesting ones. The one that I kind of spoke out to is when Shinobu had said, Tanjiro, if you use your breathing techniques, your lungs will burst. And Guillaume followed that with a phrase of his that actually stems from Buddhism. It's called, what he says is Namu Amida Butsu. It's a phrase from Buddhism, and it has a couple different interpretations, but it mainly refers to the primal vow that if you were to ascend to Buddhism or to Buddha level of sentience, that you would alleviate suffering from others. And that in this moment, Guillaume is not only trying to alleviate Tanjiro's suffering from being pinned down by one of the other Hashira, but his own weakness. And I think that just ties back to his character. It really speaks out to, even though he's seen probably a lot of war and probably killed a lot of demons, he really just wants to alleviate the suffering of others. And it's very pure for someone who's gone through a lot. So that's kind of really what spoke to me during these like somewhat serious moments for Nezuko's life. And really Tanjiro's fate as well. But after the ruckus dies down, Master Ueyoshiki finally declares that both Tanjiro and Nezuko are able to fight for the corpse. Woot woot! Woo! It's a great victory for our duo, and Shinobu offers Tanjiro to come back to the mansion. Not before Tanjiro comes racing back to Ueyoshiki, begging him to let him headbutt Sanemi at least 3 times for how many times Nezuko got stabbed, only to be stopped by Muichiro because he's shooting rocks at him. How does this tell, or what does this tell you about Muichiro, and how does it kind of contradict what we've seen from Muichiro so far? And because he seems like he could forget his own birthday, let's be real.
Oh, I mean, this is like a really funny reaction from Tanjiro. This was again like a very goofy, silly moment. And Tanjiro is usually pretty good at reading the room. Not in this moment. And like we've talked about before, I feel like he loses his cool so quickly when it's anything that has to do with Nezuko, which is like very charming and sweet. But he did not read the room here because it was like, okay, we are granting you sanctions and permission, and you may officially fight alongside your sister in the Demon Slayer Corps. Now go recover, and we have to have our important big kid meeting. And he's like, oh, okay. Hey, wait a minute. Actually, I still have something to say. And it's like inappropriate. It's like a good example of like, all right, just let it go, just be quiet and just leave, and like Nezuko's gonna be fine. But he's like, he cannot let it go when it comes to his sister. What?
He's so stubborn.
He is very stubborn when it comes to this. And usually I don't think that this is a quality that he has. It's only when Nezuko comes up. So it's like silly and goofy, but then Muichiro kind of has to be the mature one that's like, hey, kid, like the grown-ups are talking. You need to leave. So be a good little boy, be quiet, go get some sleep, and we'll see you later. Mommy and daddy need to talk. So and it's so fun. And Muichiro hasn't really talked about anything yet. He's been kind of like zoned out most of this time, talking about the clouds and stuff. So I think it's really funny that he used a little bit of his wind breathing to like escalate this little rock and like just like not knock him out or like hurt him necessarily, but just like, hey, like cut it out, like just like a flick of the forehead. Like, come on, time and place, buddy.
Oh, yeah. I was laughing that whole time. I keep saying this, but Tanjiro does not. Sometimes he does, but most of the time he doesn't understand social cues. So he doesn't like know how to act in these kinds of situations, I don't think. It's the perfect depiction. I was thinking about this the other day. Nezuko and Tanjiro are like the perfect depiction of sheltered homeschooled kids. I think that's why I like him so much. Because like you think about it, and they were like living in the mountains, only went to the town when needed. Their friends were their siblings. I'm like, that was my life growing up. I didn't live in the mountains, but I think that's why I like them so much, because sheltered homeschooled kid here. But as far as Moichiro goes, I found that very interesting because I kind of forgot he existed for a lot of the meeting. Like everyone had such loud voices. Even like Shinobu was loud in her way of like trying to take the medical side of things. You had Tengen, who was talking about being flamboyant the whole time. You had Rengoku yelling at everyone at all periods of time. You had Obanai and Sanemi just being total jackasses. Like everyone had these. Mitsuri was narrating the entire thing. What was Moichiro doing? What was the color or the shape of that cloud again? I don't remember. Like you're kind of sitting here like, what is this guy? And what is his problem? And then all of a sudden, he's like, not only flicking the rock at Tanjiro, but he's speaking in such a like fluent, like, if you're not invited or whatever, like show some respect to get out, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was like, whoa, now who is this kid? And why is he suddenly like speaking so fluently and eloquently? Which I think just shows that each one of these characters is going to go through a really good arc, and we're already seeing development just in the 2 episodes that we've met most of these, so it makes it really exciting to see what's to come.
Yeah, I think really I was very taken aback. I mean, I think to a certain extent we all have a little bit of Muichiro in us, right? Like there are moments where we all zone out and we all ask ourselves the question, what shape was that cloud? I mean, that's been me many a times in my life where I then all of a sudden am like dialed back in and I'm like, hey. But I think it's kind of interesting to see, you know, maybe a little bit of vulnerability too of these Hashira, and also reminding us that while they are the, you know, elite of the Demon Slayer Corps, they still are fallible. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to see right out the gate too, is that they also have their own individual issues. So it's a really interesting thing to think about. But once we get back to the Shinobu Mansion, we learn that our intuition from the mountain and the other demon slayer who dons a butterfly outfit, Kanao, is there. And not only that, but Tanjiro learns for the first time what a Suguko is. How did you feel when you learned about this? And how do you think Tanjiro felt in this moment, knowing that people getting personal training from Hashira? How do you feel this demonstrates Shinobu's values of her style and carrying them on to the next generation? And how does Tanjiro value the possible envy of what Kanao has?
That was a loaded question, Bryan. My goodness.
I try and make like multiple sections so that like you don't have to answer it, but you can if you want to, or like takes a conversation. I don't know.
I think that Tanjiro was on information overload at this point, and he just wants to go to bed. Like, the look on his face that entire time was very just like wide-eyed, and I don't think most things computed. I think that he was interested in the fact that, you know, a Suguko is someone who is a Hashira's like specific trainee, but he did not seem as interested in it as one would think Tanjiro would be. But I think that just is because how much information did he just get in the past few hours after being unconscious for, we don't know how long he was unconscious for, probably a few hours. So I think that he was surprised to know that people are getting that personal training, but also I just don't think it fully computed in his brain yet. But I do think it's telling of Shinobu. We get the feeling so far that she is very caring. Like, yes, was she like the first one to be like, I need to kill Nezuko? Yes, but once they got to the mansion and all the other Hashira were around, she was actually pretty tame, and she was just trying to make sure that Tanjiro didn't die from exploding his veins and that he got some painkiller. And I think we get this idea that she's very protective and she's very motherly, possibly, and that, you know, again, kind of like what I said in Moichiro, she's yet another character that we're just getting introduced to, that we are already seeing different changes in who she is. We're seeing less of the fighter side and more of the caring side, more of the almost like a doctor type thing. And I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think we're finally seeing her guard come down a little bit. And I think that's because she holds the master in very high regards. She does seem like somebody that plays pretty strictly by the rules. You know, we've heard her say one thing and then do something else so far. Like, when it comes down to it, she's a demon slayer and she wants to slay demons, but she's going to respect the whims of her master. I think especially after a demonstration like what just happened, she can't really deny the plausibility of whatever's going on. So I also think that she likes to be like the number one gold star student and is the first to volunteer her services. I mean, like, same girl, but she does right away. She's like, okay, well, if that's what the master says, then let me go ahead and just volunteer my place to like at least allow these fellas to recuperate. So of course it makes sense then that by extension that she would be willing, you know, if she's willing to share her home and her resources with these three that she was like just trying to get executed a little while ago. Like, why wouldn't she train somebody that she actually likes as well, and like try to pass down and like foster those skills? And you know, we've talked about also how interesting it is that she is a Hashira and that she was able to get there because she's strong in ways that some of the others aren't. Like, we see Gyomei and we see Tengen, and like clearly there is just some brute physical strength in those Hashira, but not for Shinobu. She really had to approach it in a different way than that, because it is just a physical difference that exists. And there's not that many people that are aware of and like maybe use like poison and antidotes in part of their approach. So I think it is important that it does get passed on to the next generation, because it requires like a deep understanding of like medical terminology, and I'm sure like dosage amounts and all kinds of things. But something that clearly can have a potent effect on both humans and demons. So I think that she knows that it's important to pass things along to the next generation. And she even says it herself later that the world is changing. So it's important to make sure that it's ready for that next group of people to take these kinds of challenges on.
Yeah, I think that Shinobu wanting to foster Kanao here is really a demonstration of who she is behind the scene, right? I think it, again, gives us some of that vulnerability to these Hashira, and it reminds us that they are people with their own stories. I think that's where some of this comes from, is now that they've let their guard down, they can show a little bit of who they are, right? You know, we've seen Giyu do that now that we are not in a fight scene, right? Because we saw him very up and very defensive in, you know, the first episode. And then when we were on Mount Nakatomo, again, a very, you know, closed off, very, I am protecting Nezuko, even though you're, you know, asking for reasons, I am not saying a word. And so these characters are starting to really change at this point, and we're starting to get to see a lot more of who they are, which is nice. Finally, we do get to cut to the Hashira meeting, where we get a little bit more information. We get to essentially sit with the execs in the room, if you will, right? We get to kind of understand what's going on. What comments stood out to you most here? Because everyone got like a little blurb in here, right? You know, which character kind of spoke to you most when they were all strategizing about what the upper moons look like?
Do you want me to go the honest route that I was literally thinking when I was watching the episode, or say something eloquent? Because my brain went not the direction I don't think you're wanting.
Go for it.
I'm going to say this with the assumption that everyone listening in has seen the Mugen Train movie. So if you haven't, I guess skip forward like 2 minutes. But and I'm sorry, Emily, that I'm about to say this, but the first thing that came to my mind is when Rengoku says that he's like jealous of Tanjiro for getting to like come in contact with the 12 Kizuki, and is like, I'm envious. I want the chance to fight one. And I just went, oh, you will.
Rip.
Pain. All I know is pain.
I'm sorry. And
The
it's
world
so sad.
shall know pain.
I know,
My world is pain.
and it's so sad.
It really is.
I was sitting there
love
thinking,
that
like,
sweet boy.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, like, maybe you shouldn't want to meet a 12 Kizuki as much as you do. Like, you get the idea that, like, I don't think pretty much any of the Hashira have really met. We know they haven't met any of the upper moons. And they've barely met 12. Well, I think most of them have killed one of the lower moons in order to be a Hashira. But you get the feeling that they're, like, envious and they really want to meet an upper moon. And sometimes it's kind of like, all right, I get that you want to slay all the demons, but maybe take a step back and with my future knowledge of what's going to happen, relax a little bit. That was the first thing that popped in my head. Their values are they're very blinded by like their hate for demons, and they just want to eradicate them, which like we agree with. We want the demons to be eradicated. But I think at some point, someone needs to have a chat with these Hashiras and maybe say, you know what? Like, you're probably going to run into an upper moon, but maybe, like, take back your passion to see one. Like, that's practically like being passionate about dying. Like, let's relax a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, we know I love my sweet boy, but I'm not going to lie. Most of the time, and part of the reason I love him is because there's not a single thought in that head. Not one. Just like, oh yeah, that sounds fun. Great. Sure, bring him on. Why not? He is our golden retriever. 100%. Obviously I was drawn to Rengoku's character too. I just think he's so funny. But something fun about watching this again, after, you know, seeing everything that is currently out that's been animated. It's fun to get another look at Tengen now too. He stood out a little bit more to me, I think, than he did the first couple of times. And you know, it's fun to hear him talking about Tanjiro too. And he is like the first one to instigate a joke back at Sanemi and be like, well, he did hit you though, so maybe this kid is going to be a good demon slayer. because he made you look like an idiot.
Tengen is low-key a huge fan of Tanjiro, and no one can change my mind on that.
He says it's flashy.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that everything that happened in the first 10 minutes of this episode was flashy. So,
I mean, obviously, with some future knowledge, there's a moment they share. So I don't want to spoil that. But I think my favorite part about this was, especially since Shinobu is not like top 5 of my Hashira, right? I do think she made a really good point. Emily kind of brought it up earlier when Shinobu was talking about how it's been a little bit more difficult to control the demon forces, right? With the human population increasing, right? There's just more people to protect. The world is changing around them, right? Now, when we've seen Tanjiro go through a big city, right? We're seeing cars maybe for the first time introduced in the Taisho era, right? So now you're seeing kind of all of these things and the world becoming more advanced. It kind of demonstrates her like mastermind thinking, right? Kind of gives me Taylor Swift mastermind vibes. Like she's really considering everything around her and how it affects her job. And I think that's a really interesting commitment she's making into understanding like, okay, we are a team. How is this team now going to tackle these essentially global challenges for them in order to make their world better? And I think it's just a really interesting take on how to move forward through this more difficult, obviously, way of, trying to save the world, which is really cool. And we also get to see Tanjiro's heart grow even larger and shine even brighter when he expresses his gratefulness for Inosuke and Zenitsu still being alive after Mount Nakatsumo, and even more so when he thanks Nezuko for protecting him. How does Tanjiro's value for relationship and friendship make you as an audience member feel? And how does he differentiate from other main characters?
oh, well, I mean, he's just so genuine. I'm not going to spend too long on this because I know it's going to be Hannah's soapbox 1,000%. But he really is he's one of those people that it's like, you just know that they mean everything that they say right from the get-go. And he is kind to almost everyone, even if maybe they don't deserve it. And at this point in time, I love Inosuke and Zenitsu, but I don't know that they've really earned the level of friendship that he's already willing to give them yet, because they just haven't spent that much time together. But you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that these aren't lifelong friends, and I think that that's just how he is. He has like a genuine care for their well-being. Seeing them all battered up in the hospital is like really upsetting for him, I think, in a genuine way. Even though upon meeting both of them, I think he was initially a little bit annoyed with each of them, but he's already come to care for them so deeply just by, they're traveling together. So I think that that's just how he is. He's just different and genuine and kind, and most people that are realistic are not like that.
Yeah, very. It makes my heart flutter a little bit, just like looking at his face, just being so genuinely concerned, but also relieved that they both were there, and his comment about like Zenitsu not only being okay, but he's like, so you did climb the mountain. Like you can almost tell that he's proud of him as well for like overcoming his fear, even though we all know that the only reason Zenitsu did it was because he was looking for Nezuko. And he was cursing Tanjiro the whole time for bringing her in. But like Emily mentioned, it's just like this genuine love for people, I think, because we've still had very little time with Inosuke, and their introduction to each other was very tough, and it's almost like he's forgotten that already, and I think that just shows how forgiving of a person he is, because we've talked so much about how when it comes to Nezuko, that's like, I don't want to say it's his like worst side of himself, but it's where he is the most just like irrational and stubborn and angry, and like all of the parts of his character that's human, honestly. But when it comes to Inosuke, he's forgiven him so quickly. He's decided that they're best friends essentially so quickly, simply because like they did one fight together, and yes, it was a tough fight, but I think that's really powerful, and again, a good call to what the future may look like for the show as far as like his influence on the other characters, and all of that. So, and it's one of the reasons why this is probably my favorite main character trio, because it's got funny vibes. You know, you've got Tanjiro, who's just like accepting of them, even though Zenitsu spends 90% of the time annoying him, and Inosuke spends 90% of the time just being weird. Inosuke.
Being Inosuke.
Being Inosuke. And you could just see how happy he was that they were okay. He apologized to Inosuke for not being able to go back to him, even though he was literally like mere milliseconds away from death himself, probably the closest one of the three. And I could talk about it forever, but I thought it was just a really beautiful scene with, you know, his pure, genuine love for them, even though it's still such a new friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, you know, in these moments, we get to see where, I guess, really watching Tanjiro on screen sometimes like feels like I'm being touched by the sun. It's like I just get warm and cuddly and fuzzy because I know that there's someone, or I know that there's, obviously Tanjiro doesn't exist in the real world, but all animated or all characters and stories are based out of something in the real world. And I think that kind of reminds me of kind of the hope that is possibly out there, that someone like that might be out there, right? Or at least the goodness of that exists, hopefully somewhere in the world. So that's kind of nice to see. But, you know, furthermore, seeing how he continually cares for everybody around him is just so powerful. And it definitely kind of shows that potential that he has as a leader going forward and what he could be doing. So that's kind of nice. But moving on to the last section here, right? We're about time for our final moments and favorite moments. So I think my favorite moment out of this episode, I kind of already talked about it, so I'm going to switch it up here. Was Mitsuri trying to hold back her laughing the entire time. My God, that's me in like everything I do in my professional life. Like when I'm at work and I think about something funny, I am just like holding it in so badly, trying not to laugh, because I think everything is hilarious, first off. And if you've ever sat in a room with me, so, you know, someday you might, I'm going to laugh at anything and everything, because, you know, to laugh at yourself is to love yourself. So thanks, Mickey. It's like a quote from Mickey
Bryan.
Mouse.
Oh, I mean, but there is so much that's so funny and so goofy in this episode, and there are serious things sprinkled throughout, and I feel like we've touched on those nicely. So I'll talk about something we haven't talked about yet either. Something that did just make me laugh. When Tanjiro goes in and he finally sees Zenitsu and Inosuke, and he's like talking to Zenitsu, and he's like, "Where's Inosuke?" And Zenitsu's like, "He's literally right next to me." But they didn't notice him because he was so quiet.
Oh.
Like not like him. And then he finally goes to talk and his throat is all messed up and the voice acting was so funny. He's like, "Hello. I'm here. I'm okay." That just like funny, silly, and like I know that it's not actually that funny because they're saying he was like all depressed or whatever from like not being able to fight a little bit better. But there is just something a little bit ridiculous about like I didn't notice Inosuke literally right there because he was being quiet for once in his life.
Even though he has a boar head on his freaking head.
Literally, like when it just panned and he's literally right there, I lost it.
I think that was a good one too, because I was like, "Oh no, Inosuke's been there the entire time."
Literally.
Rip. Oh man. Yeah, I thought the episode when I finished, I was like, that was such a sweet episode. It has you know, like many of the episodes, very, very comedic, but also like sweet moments and sad moments, you know, all the stuff. But I really had to try and narrow it down because there were 3 moments that I really loved. But I'm kind of, I first want to mention Tanjiro and Nezuko when he brings her to the room and he just talks about working hard for her and about how he's like, someday I'll grow old and die, but if you're still a demon, then you're going to be lonely. And that just really touched my heart, as any scenes with them always does. But in the theme of funny, personally, the one I always go back to is when Tanjiro tells Master Ubuyashiki that he not only is going to defeat a 12 Kizuki, he's going to defeat Muzan Kibutsuji himself. And he's like, so like, it's such a moment for him. He's like, I'm going to do it. We're going to end the centuries of pain and anguish. And then Ubuyashiki goes, you're a bit ill-equipped for that. And Tanjiro goes bright red. It's perfect because Tanjiro was still like, I'm gonna do it. He was ready to throw down when he saw Muzan in episode 7. And Ubuyashiki's like, bro, I'm thankful that you're so excited to do that, but please calm down. In such a like nice way. He's just like smiling. He's like, you're a little bit ill-equipped for that, don't you think? How about you start with a 12 Kizuki? And Tanjiro's just like, hi.
Yes, master.
Yes, sir. I thought it was so funny and such a good call out because it's like, that's something that he needed. He needed that, like, yo, you need to relax a little bit because your goals are a little lofty right now. Let's calm down.
Yeah. I do like Rengoku following up that. And he was like, a good attitude to have. Yes. Like, he was just like, aha. I just love that. Like, I like that this is also an episode where you kind of see, again, right? I've talked about this, and I feel like we've all kind of had our moments talking about this, but Tanjiro is able to change people's minds. And he definitely changed a couple, right? He got Tengen being like, well, I mean, he slapped you right in the face, Sanemi. So he was like, whoop. But then like Rengoku at the beginning was like, they both must die for breaking the rules. And he's like, the kid's not that bad. He's got ambition.
Yep.
What a time. What an episode it was. Well, of course, that's all we have for today. But we want to say thank you for another great episode of the Hashira Half Hour. Of course, you can always hit us on our socials, on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we are on Twitter. We're going to hopefully get that more rolling soon at Hashira Half Hour. But of course, we hope you guys have a great day. And we, of course, will see you next week. Umai.
Umai.
Umai.